Hello, my name is Miguel Ramirez, and today we'll be talking about China's supply side reform policy. Before we go in and talk about China's reform policy, let's talk about where supply side economics came from. Supply side economics developed during the 1970s in response to the Keynesian economic policy, and in particular the failure of demand management to stabilize Western economies during the stagflation of the 1970s. As in classical economics, supply side economics proposed that production or supply is the key to economic prosperity and that consumption or demand is merely a secondary consequence. Early on, this idea had been summarized in Say's Law of Economics, which states a product is no sooner created than it, from that instant, affords a market for other products to the full extent of its own value. John Maynard Keynes, the founder of the Keynesianism, summarized Say's law as supply creates its own demand. He turned Say's law on its head in the 1930s by declaring that demand creates its own supply. In 1978, Judah Wanniski published The Way the World Works, in which he laid out the central thesis of supply-side economics and detailed the failure of high tax rate, progressive income tax systems, and U.S. monetary policy under Nixon in the 1970s. Wanniski advocated lower tax rates and a return to some kind of gold standard, similar to the 1944 to 1971 Bretton Woods system that Nixon abandoned. In 1983, economist Victor Canto, a disciple of Arthur Laffer, published The Foundations of Supply-Side Economics. This theory focuses on the effects of marginal tax rates on the incentive to work and save, which affect the growth of the supply side of what Keynesians call potential output. While they later focus on changes in the rate of supply-side growth in the long run, the new supply-siders often promise short-term results. So what is supply-side economics? Supply-side economics is the branch of economics that considers how to improve the productive capacity of the economy. It tends to be associated with monetarist free market economics. These economists tend to emphasize the benefits of making markets, such as labor markets, more flexible. However, some supply-side policies can involve government intervention to overcome market failure. Supply-side policies are also government attempts to increase productivity and shift aggregate supply (AS) to the right. Former President Xi Jinping believes he can duplicate what President Reagan accomplished in the United States when he took the initiative of implementing the supply side reform, which had very prominent results. Xi Jinping said we should moderately expand overall demand and at the same time intensify supply side structural reform. Many are calling him Reagan's Chinese echo. So why does China need supply side reform? In 2016, China says housing prices skyrocketed 76% according to new research by economic consultancy firm Longview of Economics. A stock market crash that began in the country last summer has highlighted the vast difficulties Chinese lawmakers are now facing. Watling said Chinese housing was a story built on credit, lots of liquidity, and lots of debt. The problem of industrial overcapacity in China has assumed massive proportions, having delayed serious structural reforms. China faces eye-water overcapacity in heavy industries. The excess capacity is weighing on the balance sheets of debt-ridden firms reeling from China's economic slowdown. At the same time, tensions between China and its biggest Western trading partners are rising as European Union and United States move to curb cheap Chinese steel imports. Measures to contain overcapacity has been ineffective thus far. China's total debt rose to a record 237% of gross domestic product in the first quarter, far above emerging market counterparts, raising the risk of financial crisis or a prolonged slowdown in growth. Economists warned in April 2016. Economists say it is difficult for any economy to deploy productivity such a large amount of capacity within a short period, given the limited number of profitable projects available at any given time. With returns spiraling downwards, more loans are at risk or turning sour. China has also been facing new challenges as economic growth slows. Wages and other factors costs rise, value chains become more complex, and consumers grow more sophisticated and demanding. China is known for making products of low quality for a low price. So, what is the aim of supply side reform? The aim is to optimize allocation of production factors, boost quality of economic growth, regional economic integration, aid for trade, private sector development, and public finance. So, what's been done? Lately, they've encouraged innovation, reduced business costs, streamlined bureaucracy, boost urbanization, abolished one-child policy, tax and cost cuts for big corporates bogged down with debt, sending some of China's overcapacity to other countries through its One Belt, One Road infrastructure projects with its neighbors, cutting housing inventories by moving rural workers into third and fourth tier cities, lowering borrowing costs for corporates, tax cuts on electric cars, reduce agriculture inventories.